Quoi? Je comprends, là. Je comprends les faits. Vous avez compris.
C'est mon jeu, je pense. J'ai une réponse. Ok, c'était ma réponse, je sais quoi là.
J'ai juste entendu l'idée.
Toi?
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, nice to meet you.
Darren, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Bonjour et bienvenue au code de stratégie. Pouvez-vous confirmer votre lettre d'équipe?
J'ai.
Est-ce que vous préférez la lecture des règlements en français ou en anglais?
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
For this event, you will have 24 minutes to present your case to the judges. The first 12 minutes of the presentations are considered protected. Therefore, the judges cannot interrupt you. During the next 10 minutes, the judges have the opportunity to interrupt the presentation to ask questions of clarification on the topic being presented at that time. The judges will be limited to 15 seconds to ask a question for a maximum of 1 question per slide. The jury is reminded that they may not ask questions on a topic that has already been covered or that has not yet been presented. These questions must be addressed during the question period at the end of the presentation. The last 2 minutes of the presentation are used to conclude the presentation and are free from questions from the judges. If your presentation is less than 20 minutes long, a penalty of 1 point will be deducted for every 30 seconds. If your presentation is less than 12 minutes long, your team will be awarded a score of 0 overall for that presentation. If after 24 minutes you have not completed your presentation, you'll be stopped to proceed to the question period. At the end of the presentation, the judges will have a question period of a maximum of 5 minutes. I remind the jury that it is mandatory to ask a question during this period. If at the end of the 5 minutes you have not finished answering the question, you will be stopped. During the presentation, I will indicate the time remaining when 12 minutes, 7 minutes, and 2 minutes, and 30 seconds will be left with a card and the last 10 seconds with my fingers. A clock will also show you the remaining presentation time continuously. The judges will be notified of the start and end of the unprotected period by means of a bell. I remind you that under no circumstances may you mention the origin of your university, otherwise you will be penalized. I also remind the audience that it is strictly prohibited to use any electronic device during the presentation, and you are requested to remain silent until the very end of the question period. Before we begin, I'm going to ask the room to turn off your cell phones and put them on silent mode so as not to interrupt the presentation. I will now ask the judges to introduce themselves, and then you can begin your presentation.
Nathalie Pelletier from Bell Canada. I'm in charge of the Quebec recruitment for new grads and entry.
Simon Lapointe, HR consultant for corporate services at Bell.
Antoinette Morbito, Senior Manager for Strategies of Customer Experience, Bell Canada.
I'm Felicia Galipo. I'm Regional Sales Manager for L'Oréal Canada in the Lux Division.
Jules Gimbal, Strategy Manager at Accenture.
Luc Bélanger-Marchand. Luc Bélanger-Martin, HEC Montreal.
Pascal Carrière, Senior Director of Distribution for Metro.
When the company Bell is mentioned, the first thing that comes to mind is connection. Connection to Wi-Fi, connection to the web, but most importantly, connection to people. And we plan to take that connection one step further. We want to leverage that connection and strengthen it to really secure and ensure Bell's place within the cybersecurity market. And so using our strategic recommendations, that's what we plan to do. So good afternoon, my name is Rachel. I'm here with my colleagues Flo and Darren here to present our recommendation. So just to begin, to look over our objectives, we see that our goal here is to become the leader of the cybersecurity in the industry. And so really Bell must conceptualize their strategy in this way. So we've conceptualized this structure for you. So we wanted to begin more with the ambition. So this is what we want to achieve. So what is our mission? What is our goal? Next, we want to take a look at where to play. So this was heavily outlined within the documentation given. So it's which customer segmentations we want to focus on and which business units we really want to focus on as well. And then next, we're going to take a look at more of our how to win. So this is really the strategy portion. So what core assets and what strategies do we really want to leverage in order to win for you, for Bell. And lastly, just the capabilities. So this is just the support. So the execution, finance, and implementation that will support the previous strategy and our focuses. So to begin with our ambitions. So here just to take a look more so on our overview. So using our CSS strategy, we think that Bell can attain quick wins and sustain really long-term growth in a rapidly developing and changing industry. And so here we see our 3 objectives. So the first of which is we wanted to really connect with healthcare SMEs, and which we'll explain our rationale later, and really establish Bell as a must-have partner rather than a nice-to-have partner. Next, we really want to strengthen these relationships with these partners to really decrease churn and further protect client data, which is the main goal here. And lastly, we really want to create network effects to establish credibility with your partners and create a more of an insular system. And so what that means is we essentially want to capture your clients and then keep them there so that they can become a long-term client for Bell perpetually year over year. And so we have the impacts by numbers. So first strategy is going to be 60K in long-term value. Second, we have a 7,500 EBITDA per account and a 51% EBITDA margin. And lastly, a 28 million NPV over 5 years. And so we'll really delve into these numbers and these financials later. And so just the opportunity here is by implementing our CSS strategy, Bell will be able to successfully penetrate the SME cybersecurity market via the healthcare SMEs in Ontario and sustain long-term growth and sustain and foster these relationships that we will outline.
So first we're going to take a look at a number of really significant trends. First of all, in terms of the SME and more importantly, the cybersecurity market. So trends show that there's an opportunity for cybersecurity services. First of all, hackers attack every 30 to 9 seconds on average. That's up to 2,224 times per day, and this number is surely increasing. This leads to the idea that companies are becoming increasingly vulnerable to these attacks, and of course there's now going to be increased demand for cybersecurity services, and exponentially even going forward. Secondly, the average time to identify a breach in 2019 was in fact 200 days. So this can be very costly for companies, and it means that cybersecurity needs to get ahead of the hackers. It needs to reduce this lag, and that's what we believe that Bell can offer. This warrants a more proactive as opposed to a reactive strategy, which is what a lot of cybersecurity strategies are looking at right now. Secondly, why healthcare cybersecurity is significant? So there's 3 key trends we'd like to have. First of all, healthcare is rapidly advancing technologically at an exponential rate. If you look at the way the healthcare industry was working just decades ago, even 10 years ago, it cannot even compare to today. Right now, there's AI, Internet of Medical Things, big data, and robotics, which are revolutionizing the healthcare industry. This leads to increased opportunity, however, for hackers if the right measures and proactive measures are not taken. But this then leads as an opportunity for high potential to sell cybersecurity to healthcare SMEs based on this. Secondly, based on the industries we were granted, we calculated the profit margins and realized that healthcare was in fact the highest with a profit margin of 41%, much higher than the other industries. So SMEs should in fact have a greater incentive to pay for cybersecurity services. Thirdly, a lack of training to use cybersecurity products among healthcare employees. So even if there are actually cybersecurity software and products implemented, they need to be trained, and there needs to be a consultation process, which we'll touch on later, to create this more longer-term relationship with the companies that will be implementing Bell services. So why Ontario? So 2 trends here to look at. First of all, Ontario is a healthcare hub in Canada. So this means there's a lot of interconnected networks between healthcare SMEs. In Ontario, if you go to Toronto, or even other cities like London, there's big healthcare infrastructure in place, and these networks are very strong and can be tapped into. So this leads to strong opportunity for growth based on high quality service. In healthcare especially, it's a lot about word of mouth, reference between different institutions. So if the quality is instituted from the start, this will lead to strong network effects in the future. And secondly, there's been recent data breaches in Ontario healthcare industry, specifically just in 2019, there's huge healthcare industry breaches. And this is further tangible evidence of the necessity cybersecurity in healthcare SMEs, and it's playing off this as an ability to sell based on this recent evidence and tangible evidence that this is a necessary aspect going forward for these companies.
Yeah, so Darren mentioned some really great points about the costs as well as increasing breaches in cybersecurity issues amongst these 4 industries. But let's take a step further and actually analyze what that means. Right, so what we've taken the time to do is actually break down these 4 sectors that we have outlined in the information provided and looked at in terms of these sectors, whether or not there's a strong need for cybersecurity as well as the feasibility to actually implement these services for them, and as well as the profitability of providing services to these sectors and what that would translate to for them. So what we see is that actually healthcare had the highest profit margins, right? The information provided is about 41%. Professional services is second highest, 29%. Retail was about 4%, and construction was about 10%. So right off the bat, we know that maybe in terms of profitability, in terms of the numbers that they don't necessarily have that much cash aside to pay for these cybersecurity services. Now, in terms of need and feasibility, we mentioned that healthcare has a high number of breaches, and that's increasing every single year. And I'm going to mention another piece of data that we forgot to mention, which is that per account in healthcare, every single breach is going to cost you about $200. So think about that for a second, what that means for a company that has 10,000 records of clients or patients, right? 200,000 to $200,000, right? If you're looking at a small clinic that maybe has revenues of about $150,000 per year, you're making like a loss already, and that might cause the company to go bankrupt, right? If you have more and more accounts overall. And so what we get from this is that we're actually going to focus more on healthcare and professional services as we roll out these cybersecurity services towards the sectors. So healthcare and professional services have the high profit margins compared to other sectors and are in dire need of improved cybersecurity. Now with that said, I know that the slide is not complete as you can see, but what I wanted to highlight here is that there's a multitude of choices in how to actually price the product for these sectors that we're targeting. Right, so in the information provided, there was an idea of purchasing, of going towards more of a mass market strategy, right? So maybe in the range of $400 to $1,000. Okay, maybe it could be good. You could target maybe more customers. You could offer it maybe a more cookie-cut approach, towards a large multitude of people. Or you could go more towards full service, right? And that's more towards bigger companies. But obviously that's not the case for us because we're targeting SMEs. But what if we targeted something more in the middle of that? What if we targeted something more in the 10 to 15,000 range? Would that make sense? Well, actually we crunched the numbers, and we're happy to walk through that in the appendices later on during Q&A. But essentially what we found was that on average it's recommended for a company to spend about 1 to 2% if they're a larger company of their revenue into cybersecurity. And for a smaller company, it's actually recommended to spend about 4%. So if we actually took the data that we had about the average healthcare company, which was about $340K in terms of their revenue, you take about 3 to 4% of that, it's actually suggested that they pay about $10,000 to $15,000 a year for cybersecurity. So then you're like, wow, okay, that's actually a big difference in terms of the 400 to 1,000 when you're paying about $10,000. Does that actually make sense? Well, yes, it makes sense, because you run the risk of, if you have 10,000 records, of losing $2 million per year. Why not spend $10,000 a year to make sure that you don't go bankrupt, right? So not only is there a financial responsibility for them to make sure that they don't go bankrupt, but there's also an ethical responsibility here as well, because the data reputation is super important, right? So that's kind of how we're going about in terms of pricing. So for the rest of this presentation, we'll be laying down about 10 to 15,000 in terms of average revenue per account for the healthcare sector, and we're going to use that as the same proxy for the professional services sector as well. So what are players as stakeholders? In terms of that, we already talked about how SMEs are more likely to be devastated by cybersecurity attacks than larger companies. Why? Well, because obviously they have a much smaller base, they have less retained earnings, they might be a newer player. And generally what happens, what we see, is that SMEs actually spend a lot less money on cybersecurity, and that's actually a critical mistake. Why is that the case? Well, that's the case because a lot of people have this faulty perception that SMEs are not going to be targeted by cybersecurity attacks. That's actually faulty because a lot of hackers actually understand that SMEs are actually more prone to these attacks. And so that data about 39, one attack per every 39 seconds is actually super pertinent here. And once they're attacked, then obviously there's a dire need for cybersecurity protection. And so we like to focus on a more proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. So in terms of these strategic decisions, we focus on.
And so in terms of the strategic decisions, we did decide to go with the healthcare industry as we outlined earlier or previously. And so now we're going to just take a look at the word of play in terms of the overall look at after we've kind of done the analysis on everything. So who we really want to target, as we mentioned, was the healthcare industry, just because they are the ones who have the highest profit margin, but also are in the most need for security, for cybersecurity. And so what we want to do a more of a personalized cybersecurity package in between that mass market and customization. And so we're going to price it between 10 to 15K. Next, we want to pilot this in Ontario, as we previously mentioned, because it is the largest hub for health within Canada. And then again, as I said, the pricing is about 10K. And so leading into our opportunity, by implementing this strategy, we'll be able to successfully penetrate the SME cybersecurity market via healthcare and sustain a long-term growth with its relationships with its clients. So we're going to take a look at how to win. So this is really the how and why of our strategy. So we're going to delve into detail now that we know where we set up and what we're going to target, how we're going to win, and how we're going to capture those clients. So how to win, if we take a look at this overview, using this strategy, Bell will be able to penetrate the cybersecurity market in the healthcare sector. So looking at our first objectives again, we really want to connect with healthcare SMEs and establish Bell as a must-have partner. And so how we're going to do so is that we're really going to leverage your existing IT infrastructure that you have for larger companies and create more of a personalized package with a service as opposed to just a one-off product that you sell to them. This is really going to foster that relationship and create a 60K LTV, so lifetime value. Secondly, our second objective here is to really strengthen these relationships with your partners to decrease churn and also further protect this client data. And so we're really going to offer complimentary training with these partners and consulting services, again, to really establish you as more of a relationship and more of a partner as opposed to a one-off product you sell. And so this is really going to create 7,500 EBITDA per account with a 51% margin. And then lastly, we're really going to leverage your network effects. Bell is a massive company with different connections everywhere. We really want to leverage that to be able to establish we want to leverage your already established credibility to create more of an insular system in which your clients want to stay with you so you can sustain those relationships long term. And so we're really going to leverage your extensive network and establish these partnerships and pilot the product first, and then see how that does within Ontario, and then expand further outwards across Canada and then into other sectors like the professional services one. And so that's going to really result in an impact of $28 million NPV over 5 years. So Darren's going to go into our first strategy.
So recommendation number one is about connecting. So we believe that Bell should build and leverage its existing infrastructure to build a long-term relationship to penetrate the market. So it's very important to look at software as a service, or SaaS. It has a very high churn rate, and in fact, 30% based on surveys of this industry is considered unacceptably high. So our recommendation seeks to solve this problem that's so prevalent in the SaaS industry. So there's a need to foster long-term relationships with clients built on a high quality and very reliable service. So what would this actually look like? So first of all, it's all about leveraging the existing cybersecurity infrastructure to create an a la carte packages tailored to healthcare SMEs. So we know that SMEs don't necessarily have the huge budget that larger companies might have, where you can offer them a giant suite and they'll take it at any price. So it's all about tailoring and customizing in this a la carte method. Depending on the company or even the industry expanding outside of healthcare, they will need different services depending on what the company actually does, the data, the existing infrastructure, all these aspects, how the employees work, all these critical aspects connecting to the actual company and the client is crucial. So as mentioned, this will be priced on average about 10 to 15K, depending on the actual service. So these a la carte packages will really depend and be tailored to the companies.
You seem fairly sure that to price it between 10 and 15K is the way to go with your analysis. This seems to be very contradictory if I look at what our internal services has provided. So my question is, what are the sources and what is the competition is pricing right now?
Yeah, so what we found, yeah.
Okay.
So if we take an average, but this is the middle one is actually the one we care about the most. It's if they spend about 3% of their revenue towards cybersecurity, right? What we see is that oh no, that's the okay, yeah. I think that's about $10,000, right? You see, I think the one at the top, medium average. Yeah. That's for an average healthcare company. And so I think the key question to ask here is, you see, if we priced it towards the lower range, about $400 to $1,000, there's this misconception about price and quality, right? And what we're saying is that cybersecurity is super important for a company's health, and that what if there's that misconception and there's so much competition within the lower end of that industry, and in terms of okay, like if I purchase something that's not necessarily good, it costs like $400. What is that going to mean for my company, right? So we'd rather focus on things that are much better quality, and I think the relationships aspects here is actually the most important part, right? Because a big portion of the cost, we know that the fixed infrastructures, everything's in place for that already. The bigger part is the variable costs that come with this, and it's about the training, and about the relationships that we're building with the clients, and that's something that Darren and Rachel are going to talk about later on.
Okay.
What this means is going to be a lot of training for these companies of how to use the cybersecurity services in general, so on and so forth.
And if I could just add to that too, so basically Bell could go for the mass market approach and basically price their packages for $400 to $1,000. But what we've done, what we've seen in our analysis is that if you have the potential or the space to price it higher if you wanted to, because of the amount of the percentages in the market that companies should be investing into cybersecurity. Because what the misconception is that cybersecurity is not, like we said, a one-off package. It's something that they need to invest in for their future, because cybersecurity is not going to go away. It's only an industry that's going to be increasing into the future, and it's going to become more dangerous. And like we said, the implications and the costs, if it does go wrong, are so much higher that we believe that there should be a more custom package, but also this should be something that they should invest a lot of money into, which is why we think that the higher pricing is viable.
And all this is linked to our third point here, which is about establishing cybersecurity when you're selling to these companies as a must-have and not a nice-to-have. And it's about an investment in security, and specifically in the case of the healthcare industry, about the privacy and the ethics of the patients which you're protecting. And the fourth point here is about transitioning from a reactive to proactive approach, about getting ahead of the game, ahead of the hackers, ahead of the cyber breaches. So overall, with this part of the recommendation, by selling personalized packages as a necessity and a long-term investment for a secure future, that will establish these long-term relationships, so going against the SaaS trend of high churn, and penetrate and grow in the SME cybersecurity. So a second component of the recommendation is all about strengthening. So Bell should offer consulting and training services complementary to the actual product itself to further decrease churn and increase the security for its clients. So some interesting points here. As a lack of cybersecurity training, even once cybersecurity systems are in place. So this, in a sense, renders them redundant, because you can have a product in place, but if no one knows how to use it, especially in the case of a lot of the integrated systems associated with the healthcare industry, then it's essentially not applicable. Secondly, and very interestingly, 41% of healthcare workers in Canada have never received any training for cybersecurity. So there's a huge disconnect between healthcare, which is in fact the most targeted as of recent years in terms of all industries by cyber attacks, and that this lack of awareness and this lack of knowledge and training, and this is what we're seeking to solve. So there's an opportunity to foster longer-term relationships with clients by helping them build knowledge and training. So what will this actually look like? So firstly, complementary training and consultation services to help implement and train employees at about 3 per year. So not only is the product being offered, but also training and as well data consultation services based on a continual proactive approach, seeing what's working and what isn't working, and continuously adapting as opposed to just leaving it there. Secondly, as mentioned, analysis of cybersecurity networks to continually update the service. And what's the benefit here? It's all about furthering building long-term relationships to increase the retention and going against the quick and high churn of the SaaS industry. So overall here, by offering consultation and training services, Bell will further strengthen its long-term relationships with healthcare SMEs, which will allow it to build a very strong presence in the cybersecurity market and further sustain its position.
So now taking a look at the last part of our strategy, it's really how to win in terms of the source. So how are we going to connect with these clients, with these SMEs in the healthcare sector? So as I mentioned, Bell should really leverage its existing network to source potential clients for its new service and for this package. And so Bell has an extensive reach via other services, so cable, networks, telephone, TV, etc. And they should really leverage those as an opportunity for a network effect with existing clients to strengthen, not only strengthen the relationships, but also establish put its foot in the door for a new service, so for cybersecurity. And so first, we believe that we should target existing Bell customers who have relationships with Bell currently, because here you already have credibility with them, so they'll be a lot more open to listening to what you have to say. And so we think that you should set up personal meetings with them to discuss the necessity of cybersecurity and use data that you have with them to personalize the pitch. So where have you seen disconnects already? Have you had any attacks already with your data? And then how can we use this package to help you basically overcome that. And so we really want to pilot with about 50 healthcare SMEs to assess performance and usability there. So we really believe that by using your network, you'll have a strong base to really enter this market. So Nick, can I take a look at the capabilities?
Yeah, so I realize that we have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to power through slides. So in terms of financials, we understand that retention is super important in order for you to actually drive profitability, especially for the SaaS company. So here I have outlined, we can talk about this later, but essentially higher churn rate means lower profitability. And impact by numbers, I want to tell you that overall, per customer in the healthcare industry, we're making about $60,000 in terms of customer lifetime value, $7,500 in terms of EBITDA per account, a 51% EBITDA margin as an average over the next 5 years, and NPV over 5 years. This is actually based on a bear case in terms of just their healthcare sector. And yeah, so that's it. And I'd like to wrap up in case you have any questions.
Right. So you're going to run a pilot for 50 SMEs. What's your implementation plan after the pilot? Like, what's the duration of the pilot, and what's going to be your implementation strategy after that?
Yeah. So there's about half a year to 1 year for the system development. In congruence, we're going to be testing it out on the 50 SMEs, right? And so product launch, ideally, it should be within the next 1 to 2 years. Once that's done, then we can kind of test the waters and see how the markets are reacting to the product. That's just for healthcare. And then simultaneously, like later on, maybe 3 years down the line, once the healthcare one is really kind of established, then we'll look to expand more to professional services. Now, there's also a very important thing while we're starting off with healthcare first, because it's an industry that's, number one, being targeted more and more, and two, in terms of the expertise that you need to be within the healthcare industry, that's actually very high. Because you look at a clinic or a healthcare service, they'd rather focus on companies that are more specialized in these. And if Bell can prove itself as very strong in this regard during its implementation, that's done through the pilot cohort, then it'll be much better at entering this target segment.
You mentioned you wanted to start with the Ontario market because of the healthcare selection. You also mentioned you wanted to go into professional services after. So does that mean we're changing the geographic landscape after, or are we just keeping Ontario?
Yeah, so essentially the idea behind that is that we would start within healthcare within Ontario first, and then expand geographically, because why change a product if it is successful, and then expand across geographically, and then afterwards penetrate the new market or new industry with professional services once you have established yourself to be leading within healthcare first.
Okay. And do you have any idea on the timeline on that? Would that be like within 2 years, 3 years?
So I believe the pilot for the 50 SMEs should, as Flo mentioned, to be about 1 to 2 years in congruence, but then I think throughout those 1 to 2 years, you should have multiple checks and balances to see whether or not that is working and if it's sustainable. So if it does check out and you are successful within that industry, then after, let's say, the first year, you should start expanding, looking to expand into other geographic locations. But let's say it doesn't work within healthcare, then you should start to look to transition into professional services you can find a better foothold there.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure if you guys have touched base on market penetration in that healthcare segment.
We have some rough numbers. So at the top, you kind of see the in terms of accounts, right? So we're starting off with kind of 50 accounts, and then we're kind of rolling that eventually. And so in terms of market penetration, we see that in the end we have about 6,000 accounts just for healthcare, and then the healthcare segment is about 100,000 SMEs, so that's about 6% of that.
Okay.
And the reason why we want to start initially with the 50 is a very, since we're trying to foster longer-term relationships, it makes more sense to start with fewer number and really key in on those and establish these longer-term relationships before expanding sales team.
Yeah, and essentially our data suggests that higher retention with a smaller customer base is actually much more profitable than having a larger base with less retention. And the reason being the amount of money that you're spending to actually acquire those customers.
Okay. We know that TELUS is a big competitor in the healthcare space, but because they own most of the market. So how are we going to position ourselves versus them in order to win in that sector?
Yeah, so that's why we decided to start with a smaller number of clients first, so about 50, and also have it established through Bell's connections already. So those companies are small SMEs who are already using you for other services, for example, Wi-Fi internet. You already have that credibility with them, so you can broach the subject of cybersecurity because many of these SMEs don't actually have cybersecurity implemented already. So TELUS may own a large portion of those already using the service, but you have a bunch of other clients that you have the opportunity to acquire first, to even broach cybersecurity in the first place with them.
Should you pick another segment? Which one would it be?
The professional services.
Yeah, so professional services based on profit margin and other syndications.
What are the risks of your strategies and how can you avoid them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think our pilot period is actually just to take that into account. Right? We're starting off with 50, and keep in mind that healthcare, as you mentioned, is the one that actually takes like the more expertise and maybe more investments to start off with. So once that's kind of out of the way, we'd be much more confident going into, let's say, professional services, retail, et cetera, because we already got through the largest hurdle in the first place.
We're going to run out of time.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks so much. Merci beaucoup. Je donne toujours mal en rente. Thank you. Thank you.